this yesterday. We talked about the the Senate race and how close it is. And there's a lot that we're going to talk about in the coming days locally. We're going to talk about the ballot initiatives. I had a great conversation yesterday with Tom Collins from Clean Elections, and we sat down for the TV shows. We taped the TV show to go over, I think there's 16 different statewide ballot initiatives, and then you factor in the others in Maricopa County. And we've got it's a two-page ballot, but it's front and back. So it's 4 pages that you're going to have on your ballot. If you're an early voter, you'll have some time to go through everything. And if you go to the polls like I do, you need to have that information in your mind before you stand there with the ballot in your hand. So we're going to talk about that in the coming days. But what's strange is, as we've watched over the last few months, and I told people early on, when it looked like the former president was not way ahead, but was climbing very quickly and broadening his lead against President Biden, I said then, it's a long way from over. These poll numbers are going to be all over the place. When the vice president took over as the candidate, she was able to stop that bleeding and reverse course. And then I told everybody on the other side, if you're a Harris supporter, if you think this is going to be a runaway, you're wrong. That in the end, this is going to be a very tight election. And there are going to be key things that will win it or lose it in key states. And Arizona was, of all the 7 swing states, not my opinion, the numbers in the polls consistently showed that Arizona was the safest for the former president. We are now seeing that that's not necessarily the case, that it is truly a toss-up within the margin of error. Now, I will be honest with you. If I didn't think that the former president was going to win, and I don't mean this with my heart, I mean in my head, I wouldn't say it, but I still believe that Donald Trump will win Arizona. I think that's going to happen. But there are reasons why these numbers are close. I talked about this earlier this morning. The vice president has done a very good job of managing her, or at least her campaign people have done a very good job of managing her campaign and her messaging. They didn't pay attention to the people in the media that said you're not talking to the media. They ignored it. They messaged the way they wanted to. Television commercials and rallies. Control the narrative, control the message, control what the public sees. And they did that for an extended period of time. She has made mistakes. It doesn't matter where you stand on it. If you want to be honest, and you have to be honest about things, she's made mistakes in how she has said things. And she does, there's the accusation or the assumption or the perception, I think is probably a better word, the perception of the word salad stuff. There's a reality in it. That's why people see it this way. She was being interviewed by Stephanie Ruhle, and she was speaking at rallies and speaking to groups of people. This is from a group she was speaking to. And you tell me when you hear this, what are you getting from this? What information do you get? I think this is part of how they've controlled the narrative for the most part. But listen to this.
We need to guard that spirit. We have to guard that spirit. Let it always inspire us. Let it always be the source of our optimism, which is that spirit that is so uniquely American. And let that then inspire us by helping us to be inspired to solve the problems that so many face, including our small business owners.
I'm just saying, it sounds like someone who had to give a book report that didn't read the book. I don't want to be insulting. I'm saying when you hear that, those are the mistakes that they've avoided for the most part. So the vice president's coming to Arizona. She's going to the border. I think that they feel like, her campaign feels like, that she's got an inroad on the border angle they've taken. It's been a disaster. She talked about this is about same group of people. We've got to move past failed policies.
We just need to move past the failed policies that we have proven don't work.
We have to move past the failed policies that we have proven don't work. That's her administration. She's the vice president. I mean, if she's saying we've got to move past the failed policies of Donald Trump, That was 4 years before. So my point is, somehow, for whatever reason, they believe they have an inroad on the border conversation, which is why she's going to go to the border. It is a campaign strategy of speaking to independent voters, speaking to non-committed independent voters. Democrats, 96% of Democrats in the last poll, 95 or 96% of Democrats are hardcore Harris voters. They're voting for her. I'm talking about registered likely voters, 95, 96%. 94% of Republicans voting for Trump. You got them. You have them. Now what are you doing to get those others? So I mentioned this the other day. I think it's worth repeating. You've got these people that are undecided, which means they're not a big fan of either one. Maybe in their minds, it's the lesser of two evils. Maybe in their mind, it's who do I dislike the least? Which is the one that's going to do the least amount of damage? So the border's a mess. I'm not necessarily in favor of mass deportations. I don't like the way that sounds or looks. What is she going to do? Now she goes to the border. She's standing in Douglas, and she says, you know, we are much better than we were, but we've got a lot of work to do, and we're going to be fair. And let's say she doesn't say really anything specific about her plans. We're going to be humane, and we're going to be fair, but we're going to be secure, and we're going to stop fentanyl, and we're going to, and all she's got to do, if you look at how close the races are, all she has to do is convince 0.5% of those independent voters, 1% of those independent voters. And when you are that strategic, and what's fascinating about that, in 2016, that's exactly what the former president did, candidate Donald Trump did. In 2016, he was surgical in where he went. And those districts, I said this earlier again this morning as well, but look me up, fact check me on it. Donald Trump flipped about 200 congressional districts by 1% to 2% that twice voted for Barack Obama, and they flipped and voted for Donald Trump and not Hillary Clinton. And he won those states by 1% here, 0.5% in this district. It was razor thin, but he was surgical and strategic in who he spoke to and how he spoke. The Harris campaign feels as if they are strategic, or at least it looks to me, if they are strategic in how they go and where they go. Look at Pennsylvania. I'll tell you where I think the former president, great move. Go to Butler, Pennsylvania. Get in there, go back to where that attempted assassination happens. Stand defiant, stand strong, put your fist in the air and say, we're back and we're not going anywhere. When you hear them argue about fracking, that's important in Pennsylvania. He's got to hammer that home. It is also about the sale of U.S. Steel, and you got to talk about that in Pennsylvania. That's being strategic. That is being surgical. And those are the things that are going to win this race for one or the other. And the last thing I'll say on this is the vice presidential debate. Normally, and I think most experts would say, it's fascinating, it's interesting, it's entertaining, and it's meaningless. I don't know in this case. With the race as close as it is, when every vote is going to matter, this could be if one of these two has a spectacular night or one of these two has an abysmal night, it could play a big role. I'm anxious to see how it all plays out.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.